Morning, everyone. So I'm Katie. I'm the fundraiser at Glencoe Folk Museum. Started working with the organisation back in October. And it's been great. It's been great fun, been really good. My background isn't particularly in heritage. I'm more kind of general, small charities, maybe charities that have a bit more of a niche cause, which has been really good because I've been obviously partnering up with David, who has that really heritage background. I've got the more kind of general background. So it's been a great partnership and kind of bringing different experiences into the museum. And what I'm going to do today is hopefully give you guys a bit of that, so tell you a bit about what I've learned in other sectors and how I'm applying, or other people, other charities within the wider sector, and how I'm applying that to our heritage work. So now let me see. Okay, so first of all, before you do anything when it comes to fundraising, is you kind of need to think about your target markets. And the issues that a lot of charities have is they maybe go to a marketing firm who is very used to working with corporates, and they may, even if they are used to working with charities, sometimes they get kind of stuck behind the typical terms of target market. So they talk about customers and the different customer segments. And while that does kind of work for charities, it's not the best way to do things. So I would say maybe take a step back and actually come up with your own titles for your target market so that you're talking about them in the right way. So I've got 5 examples here. This is a kind of applies to Glencoe. It might not apply to every organisation here, but you'll have something similar. So the bottom 2, which is an odd way down to start, but service users, that's kind of general across all charities. Most of you will have some sort of community work you do. So when I say service users, I mean if you've got kind of a local school or a care home you work with. And then again, local businesses and organisations who want to support the local area. So these organisations like local businesses are kind of more interested perhaps in actually the community support, like they're maybe less interested in heritage, more interested in how do we help our local community. So you've got to keep that in mind. And the first 3 are the people who are maybe more interested, or the first 2 are the people who are more interested in the heritage side of it. So these are your kind of core supporters, those that are very dedicated to the museum, people have an ancestral connection. They're the ones who really get what you do, get why you do it, why it's important, and those are the ones you're going to talk to very carefully about, what you do in the history. So the actual artifacts, the things that you're showcasing, what it is you do as a core product. And then number 3 is kind of somewhere in between. That's people who maybe have been to the museum or whatever your organisation is, people that have visited or got involved, but it's maybe just because they're local. If they weren't local, they might not have visited. They're not super engaged with your kind of background, your story, and that's okay. That they can still be one of your target markets. You just have to think carefully about how you engage with them. So that's 4 examples. You kind of come up with your own, but that's an example of how you might split up your target markets a wee bit differently from the customer segment. Then next, it's kind of thinking about what do you offer each of those ones in terms of a fundraising product. So are they the kind of the number 1 and 2 there, the people that have an ancestral connection or a historical connection, they're going to be interested maybe in high level sponsorship opportunities. They are going to be interested in sponsoring the restoration of a particular item or making sure your building's maintained. And what I've said here is split this into heritage and community focus, because the other people that might be interested in the high level sponsorship are those local businesses, or not so local businesses, but Scottish businesses. They might be interested in or maybe able to give a lot of money, but they might not be interested in sponsoring the restoration of a painting. They might be much more interested in sponsoring your school's outreach programme or your care home programme. So when you're going to speak to these different people, it's the most important thing is to try and think about their motivations, what makes them feel good, and use that in your ask. Next, I'm kind of moving on to low level donations. This is something that's a bit more accessible. We can all do, everybody can kind of get involved in. You might ask people that are really dedicated but don't have a lot of money to just do a kind of standard donation. So make a donation of £100 or give £5 a month. But what I recommend to pretty much every single charity, small or otherwise, is that you have some sort of reward scheme so that they can donate to you, but they get something from it. So they're going to win a prize, or it's like a lottery, so they might win money. And that's a way of, if we go back to the last slide, so I don't know if it's going to let me go back to the last slide actually, but number 3, those people who are been to the museum, really enjoyed it, not super engaged, you tap into them using these reward schemes, and it's just a way of really expanding your market. So have a think about people that don't just write them off. Think about actually how can we get those people to donate. Linked to that is the events. You kind of want to split your events up into maybe the high level sponsorship, those really dedicated people, and the more kind of fun general community events like Easter activities. Local families are going to want to do that whether they're that interested in history or not, and it's a good way of maybe unlocking future support and donations from these people. So it's really about kind of having a program of events through the year that speaks to these different groups. Getting as many people in and interacting with the museum as possible. And again, volunteering opportunities are kind of the same. You will have people that want to come in and spend 2 days a week in the museum every single week, talking to guests, and they are brilliant. But there's also people who are maybe very interested but don't have the time, or who are kind of half interested, but that's way too much commitment for them. They maybe got another charity they volunteer for. Think of ways that you can use them too. So one thing I always suggest charities set up is like what I would call social media champions. Those are people who you say can once a month you share something on your social media, share one of our posts. So if we put up a Facebook post, all we're asking is once a month that you share it. That might not seem like a lot, but if you've got 50 social media champions and every one of them shares a post about fundraising every single month, the reach that you can have, it can actually be really huge, and it can reach different people that have never heard of your museum or your organisation, that haven't heard of you. So it's all about creating these different options and different levels so that there's something for everyone. Within the time scales that you have, because I know most of you will have very limited time for fundraising, but do as much as you can. Next, I'm just going to have kind of a few top tips, a couple of pages of top tips about the organisation. I will actually send these slides to David and he can pass it on to all of you, so don't feel that you need to scribble it all down. So the first one is, again, just really talking about that reward option, getting people in who are interested, but you're not the number one cause. And then the next two are kind of linked. So you want to be on trend, but you also want to try and create fundraising products that relate to your cause. So for us, an example is, hiking fundraising is really on trend at the moment. And yeah, we could just say, we'll take you up, the mountain in Glencoe. That would probably work really well. But one of the trustees was suggesting on the day, well, why don't we do a specific hiking fundraiser where people have to take the route that the children and what the women had to take during the Glencoe massacre, actually experience what they had to do and get sponsored to do that. That's a really powerful, really different fundraising opportunity that's going to pick up people's interest. Because if you're going to do a hike, you're kind of competing with people doing the Free Peaks challenges and stuff. So what can you do that makes yours totally different? And I know that's hard to come up with, but actually using, I didn't come up with that. That was one of the trustees, and it's a great idea. So use everybody in your organisation to kind of think about these things, and together you'll probably come up with something really special. But it's still on trend. It's still very relevant. And linked to that again is kind of really consider, there's obviously big events every year. There's like the Scottish Marathon, the Kilt Walk, all these big Scottish events. And you can put a lot of your time and effort into promoting those, but can you compete with your local hospice? Maybe the answer is yes, and you go for it. But if you're not sure if you can do that, just kind of measure, your time versus the payback you're going to get from that, because that's really important in fundraising. For instance, I'm not going to advertise the Kilt Walk for Glencoe Folk Museum because it's very kind of, it's all the cities. We don't really need any of them, so it wouldn't really seem worthwhile. And then the last point in this page, this is something I come across a lot in pretty much every charity I've worked in, is that a lot of the time people don't actually know you're a charity that needs donations. So your first hurdle is getting people to understand that you're not a for-profit organisation. So you need to be talking online about the fact that you want donations, that you are a charity and doing events. And all of this kind of ties into your trusts and grants fundraising. As David touched on earlier, we've got this 2 million, we've still got some to raise. All of these trust and grant funders will look at all this other stuff you're doing, and that's a real factor in their decision-making process. So there's a reason that a lot of the funders and grant grant funders ask for your social media handles, it's so that they can go on and see that you're asking for donations on your social media. That's a lot easier for them. You might be doing all these events and not talking about it in social media. The grant funders aren't going to know that. The easiest way for them to figure out what you're doing is what's on your website and what's on your social media. So make sure you're really shouting about everything you're doing fundraising wise, even the small things. Okay. Then just another page of stuff. I would say as well, like this is particularly true for either kind of social media appeals or trusts and grants. Don't be afraid to talk about kind of current day service users. Obviously what you do is about history and heritage, but people really connect to that, but they really connect to kind of people of today. So if you can talk about the impact it's had on a local young person, you can still tie it into heritage, but talk about how learning about the history has inspired that young person. Use that human element to really pull on the heartstrings, and don't feel like, well, I don't want to say that because we can't kind of compete with a children's charity in that sense. Forget that. Just be as emotional as you can be, because whether it's somebody looking at a social media post or somebody looking at your fundraising trust application, it's a person. It's not an organization. Everybody that reads your grants is a person. So I would say be as emotional as you can. Take inspiration from out with your sector. While I said you can't maybe do all the same things, definitely look around. Don't just look at other museums, see what other people are doing. Think about what you do locally that no one else can offer. For instance, I've been to lots of like networking events at places like other charities, football clubs, and they're brilliant. So if you can offer like a local networking organisation a space to come and do a networking event in somewhere totally different, don't underestimate the power of that. And it also brings local businesses in. Invest in branding, photography, marketing, pretty self-explanatory. When it comes to these wee fundraising events, I'd always say don't expect to make a big profit on them, particularly at first. Even if you're a big charity running a charity ball, it can take like 3 years before you can expect to make a profit on a big event like that. So see these community fundraising events for what they are. They're a way to get people engaged and unlock further support. And give yourself a bit of space to fail. If you put pressure on yourself to make a profit and hit targets at every single event, you're just going to stress yourself out and you're never going to try anything new. So I would say at least a couple of events a year, something that you're like, this might totally not work, but it doesn't matter because it's one of our kind of trial events, and that will nurture much better, more interesting and grow your fundraising. Use your trustees. That's a lot. We're doing a lot of work in that just now. We've actually split them. We're quite lucky. We've got a lot of different trustees, so I've split them into pairings. And there's a corporate team and there's an individual giving team, and they're all kind of learning about quite a specific area of fundraising and getting to know that, rather than me just bombarding them all with the whole fundraising thing, which will freak them out. They're all learning a little bit and learning how they can work on a little bit. And I would say give them really easy, achievable targets. With trustees, a lot of the time, it's not that they don't want to help in fundraising, they just don't have the confidence. So you have to build up their confidence by giving them, like, you invite 2 people to our next event, hand out 10 flyers, share 1 LinkedIn post a month, give them something really tangible that they can achieve. And then after that, feel, oh, do you know what? I did do fundraising. I did this. It was great. And I managed it. And when you're bringing in new trustees, kind of set expectations around fundraising. Make sure that's part of the conversation so that they know what's expected of them. Because they can be a real asset. And I just talk to them regularly. If you've got a fundraiser, get them in with your trustees to board meetings. It's so valuable, and you get great ideas. And then finally, I'm just going to end on a few kind of fundraising products that I think are really good, some of which we're using already at the museum. So the giving lottery, I talked a lot about those kind of reward option donations. So the giving lottery is a great one. It's like a free lottery platform that any charity can get involved in, and they give you all your marketing. It's free to sign up, and basically your supporters pay £1 a week for a lottery ticket, and for every supporter that does that, you get 40p from each ticket. So if one person signs up, you're getting 40p a week, and it really, the prizes are great. They can win £25,000, or they can win, a trip to Centre Park. So those are cool prizes. So I'd recommend that one. The next one is the DonorFi database. It's a free, make sure you do the free plan, but it's a really good way. It's really easy to use. It's a really good way of keeping track of your fundraising, particularly your grant fundraising. So it helps with continuity of staff members, particularly if you do bring in a fundraiser at some point. If all the stuff's there on a good database, it will be much easier for them to kind of hit the ground running with your trusts and grants. Facebook fundraising, I recommend doing the whole birthday fundraiser thing on Facebook. If you can set it up, because I'm having a bit of a nightmare setting up the Glencoe Folk Museum one, but if you can get Facebook fundraising set up, my recommendation would be get maybe a trustee or a CEO to set it up, because if you try and set it up as a kind of external person, it can be quite difficult. Buy me a coffee, that's David's idea actually, that's something he's introduced, and that one is great because it's great because it doesn't, other charities aren't going to use that because it is a kind of arts and heritage focused thing, so it's a great one for being like, we're a museum and this is a one for us, so go for Buy Me a Coffee. And the last one is People's Fundraising, which is a great way to do like online auctions and raffles of your own. If you're doing like say a Christmas fair and you want to sell raffle tickets on a day, but you also want to sell raffle tickets online, you can do it both, and it's free. They take a cut of the profit, but it's free to use, and it's a bit more complicated, but it's not too bad. And they have a really good support team. You just phone the number and they talk you through everything. So those are my fab fundraising products. And I think I'm at about my time there. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Been good to be invited along, and yeah, happy to take some questions from you all.
Thank you. So I will hand over to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for Katie? You can just unmute yourselves and shout out if you want. Well, I'll start. What's this Buy Me a Coffee? I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, I mean, David, you can explain if you like, but it's basically a way of, it was set up for artists, and you can, the idea is that you buy them the cost of a coffee. So, you know, that way, if you go to view an artist's painting, you might not be able to afford to spend hundreds of pounds on it. The idea is you're buying them a coffee because you enjoyed seeing the painting, and it kind of works we think it works really well for museums and heritage. So.
And one of the things that really appealed to me about it is it's a really short link and phrase you can just drop in the bottom of a Facebook post, even if it's nothing to do with that. You can say, if you like our work, why not buy us a coffee at blah, blah, blah. And then that's it. You don't need to put a big spiel in like we feel we do when we use a Just Giving link or something. Mm-hmm. It's just a quick way. And we also, most museums seem to do this, but we certainly put a lot of pictures of us drinking coffee on social media. So it's very much on our brand.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting. At the Fundraiser Folk Museum, a series of which I'm chair of the trustees, we're blessed because we have a coffee shop, and it's a great place for coffee and cake. And I'm just thinking there that we could tie in that as a little additional thank you to somebody who has donated, and we'll treat them to coffee and cake in our coffee shop.
That's a great idea. Yeah, so it's like using what you have. That's brilliant. Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
hi. I work with a collection which has previously been supported by a membership organisation, and so fundraising hasn't been something that they've really thought about, but they're looking at how they sort of diversify their fundraising. And I wondered if you had any tips for things that you can use like on the day. So we have a limited number of events, and we don't have a location where people can come all the time. And so are there any good sort of tech solutions to capturing donations at the moment at an event that you could recommend?
Yeah, definitely. There's quite a few text ones where you can just text a number and like make a donation there. I was going to add some to the slides earlier and I forgot. So what I might do is I'll put one of them on the slides before I send them over, and the name has totally escaped me, but there's a few text ones. There's also QR codes which you can scan, which are really good. And yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, you can have a collection bucket, but you can have a collection bucket with a QR code on it. You can also get now a lot of tap to donate with their cards, because that's the problem, is people don't carry cash. So I would look into tap to donate solutions. But I mean, sometimes the most effective way is have a poster with the text to give information. And I actually use a combination of them all. There's some systems which you can use a text, use a QR code. And then the problem is with that is not everybody's phone works on all of them. So if you can maybe give people 3 different options of how they can do it on the day, at least one's going to work. Give a website link, even just put your Just Giving link up there, I would suggest. But have a few options is always the answer, because there's always someone that can't do the text or can't manage the QR code. So
that's brilliant, thank you.
Rihanna, do you want to go?
Hiya. Yeah, I was just thinking this is amazing. But I remember when I was getting into museums, getting kind of good fundraising advice is really, really hard. This kind of not like high level, how do you go for, you know, Heritage Lottery Fund or something like that, but basically like how can you use, and especially now it's kind of shifting, so you have this kind of new kind of gig economy and stuff like, you know, there's new ways of doing it. And I was just thinking in terms of the Rural Museums Network, I was just checking on the website. So I teach museum studies, so I've got a bit of an ulterior motive that I'm trying to give resources to people who are trying to get into the sector. But I'm based at the Museum of English Rural Life. And I was just thinking something for the Rural Museums Network, it might be really nice to actually pull together, you know, obviously these slides, but some other examples of these kind of techniques people are using for people who are in smaller organizations. I just thought it's really interesting. And I was just thinking, God, I wish I could have had this when I was 21, because I was looking everywhere for this kind of training. So yeah, like I said, I've got an ulterior motive because I would definitely promote this to my students, but I think also like staff who are coming into the sector, it's really useful to have a think about that, especially with some of these kind of tech options. So yeah, it was just to say I really enjoyed it, and can we share it somewhere where other people can use it?
Yeah, no, thanks. That'd be great. I mean, you know, we can maybe have a chat about that later, about something a bit bigger that I could work up for your website or something like that. But I think yeah, that's it. And it's about giving people ways, because I mean, applying for trusts or going for major donors, that's a lot of work. So it's about giving people that maybe don't have a fundraiser and house really easy ways to donate. I think that was kind of what I was focusing on today. So, but there's so much more that information out there that I could give to you. So yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Can I say, I think Katie was absolutely right. She didn't use the words that I'll use, but when you're approaching corporates and businesses, be brazen about it. I'm on a steering committee for the Reforesting Scotland's Hut of Wellbeing project. We're building a hut in a wood on the Falkland estate in Fife, where people who are going through a difficult time in life could possibly have some respite. And hopefully it'll engender a sense of well-being. And I fundraise for that. And what I found worked quite well is they want to know what you're going to do with the money. So we found it worked quite well with businesses to say, we're looking to buy timber to build the hut. And we show them what, you know, if we got £1,000, well, we could panel one side of the wall off or whatever. And that seemed to catch their imagination. And then we'll have sponsors days. So when the piles go in the ground before the hut's built, they'll be coming along, because there'll be people who have. So if they can identify with some aspect or item.
Yeah, definitely. That's the way to do it. I mean,
but you're right, Katie. It works really well.
Works well. And there's different names for it. That kind of I maybe call a sponsorship tariff. It's a kind of maybe slightly more expensive thing, but you should also maybe just all develop like a little shop, what we call a shopping list, which is like £5 gets you this, £10 makes this, you know. So like we are developing sponsorship tabs, but some of it's more low level. So like £50 will sponsor a quiet evening at the museum for people with additional support needs. So have that whole range of stuff, and have stuff that's, like I say, have stuff that's very heritage, have stuff that's community based, have stuff that's really physical like the timber, and then you'll find that everyone will be able to connect to something within those options. So yes,
many years ago it was buy a brick.
Yeah, that was
another one. What I thought was nice, when you came to the event and bought your brick, you wrote a message on the brick. And so the red brick would be the finish inside the building. And you could look, it was a bit like going to the theatre and seeing somebody's name at the back of the seat because they sponsored.
Yeah, no, and people love that, you know, and it's been done for years, but people still like it. If they can actually physically get involved in getting their name up there, people love it. It makes them last, you know, they feel like they're lasting long past their time at the event. So, yeah.
Chloe, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say hi to everybody, because I've not been to one of these yet. I'm from Glencoe Folk Museum, so hello everybody. Nice to see you all. Yeah, it was just really it's kind of following up where we're at the moment. We don't have a fundraiser, so it's really kind of asking Katie and others you know, how much, how long is a piece of string, but how much time do you put in as a fundraiser, and what are people's experiences of working with volunteers as well? Because we're in that catch-22 situation where we need to raise funds, but we can't quite afford a fundraiser.
I mean, well, I'm 2 days a week. What I would say for that, and you know, as and not that I'm plugging myself, because you know I've got quite a lot of contracts at the moment, but there is a lot of fundraising consultants that you can get, and even like you can get from 1 day a month up to 3 days a week. So if you have even a very limited fund, one option is to use a freelancer or a consultant, and you don't even have to have them in every day. You know, I've got some charities that I work for 3 days a month, for instance, because they've got a really limited budget. So that's one option. If you really don't have kind of any budget at all, then it's kind of actually carving out some of your own time. Pick a member or 2 members of staff, and they maybe have to carve out some of their own time. You know, if they can carve out even half a day a week, it can make a difference. But at the end of the day, the more time you spend on it, like you say, the more time you'll get. When it comes to volunteers, it can be quite tricky, because I would almost say that if you're going to start using volunteer fundraisers, you have to almost double your kind of time that you spend, because managing volunteer fundraisers is really, really hard. Setting up community volunteer fundraising groups, really tough task. So it's not an easy, what I would say, it's not an easy solution. And don't kind of expect it to be and say, oh, we'll just recruit some volunteer fundraisers, they'll go off and do stuff. It doesn't really work like that. You have to have a real strategy in place. You have to give them targets. You really have to hold their hand through it the first year. You will occasionally get a superstar fundraiser who will come in, I'll just go off and do this fundraising event for you, brilliant. But they're few and far between. If you want to kind of proactively do that, just be prepared again, maybe allocate half a day a week to spend just kind of managing and looking after, promoting, doing all the stuff that are in that group. So you could have a half day on each, a half day and doing your own stuff, a half day on managing any volunteers and building up that volunteer fundraising group. And that would probably start to get you somewhere. But like you say, the more time you spend on it, the more you get out of it. You know, I mean, between me and David, there's obviously quite a lot of hours being put in, because I think David's full time and I'm 2 days a week, so it's a lot. But then, you know, we are going through a multi-million-pound redevelopment, which is not what everybody's doing. My kind of end of things is kind of non-redevelopment, so building up. So obviously my targets are much lower than David's. So yeah, and the other thing is it can take a few years to get things going. So don't feel like you have to start and you have to put loads of time to just start with little bits, like putting up the occasional post about it, build it up slowly, and then a few years time it will kind of naturally grow itself. But I think the most important thing is to actually tell people you need donations. Just tell them, and even if you just get a few £100s in the first year because you don't have a lot of time, at least you've got that mindset, you've changed people's mindsets about who you are. I think that's the big one. So
thank you, that's really helpful.
You guys, a wee while ago, possibly before your time, David, you did a sponsor the object, so you could sponsor an object within your collection. How did that go as a way of getting money?
Well, that was the scheme I set up.
Okay.
It feels like I've been in this job so long that things like that are ages ago. That was the last thing we did before COVID. That did pretty well, actually. We had a number of objects with prices from £10 up to I think 75 or £100. We've found very much it is as successful as the amount of promotion you put into it. So when it's just sitting there on the back burner, I mean, it's on our website. We do link to it occasionally, but really it does rely on a semi-constant flow of new objects or reminding people. But we've raised, I think, at least a couple of £1,000 through it, so it's certainly not to be sniffed at, and it's led people to give us much more sizable donations. For instance, someone gave us £1,000 to help restore our boat, which was off the back of them seeing the listing for the object, which was only listed for about £50, I think. So it's definitely worth doing. It's a certain amount of effort to set up, but it's definitely worth it.
Can I just come in on the back of that? We did a Adopt an Object campaign as part of some work at Norwich Castle, and that one really takes off each Christmas. So it's still going, but every Christmas, those really awkward people who you never know what to buy for, I think, get bought nice Norman daggers and interesting curios, and then obviously receive items in return in terms of photos of the object and tickets to come and see the museum. But it seems to peak every Christmas, and often just before Christmas. So I think it's the last minute shoppers going, what can we get Uncle George, which he hasn't already got.
So did you say that was Norfolk Castle?
That was Norwich Castle. Norwich Castle adoption object.
I cribbed so many ideas from your website when we were setting this up. So thank you very much.
It's all fairness of sharing. No worries.
Yes.
No, I'm just thinking about that. I'm working with a World War II museum just now, and actually that could be a really brilliant way of doing it, because that's got, like you say, there is something about kind of Christmas time when you're trying to find something which is a little bit more different. So yeah, so in terms of the rewards for that, for both of you, what rewards was it that you gave to the people who donated your objects?
Well, from our end, you got a very nice printed certificate. You got free entry to the museum for a year. You got, I think, a 30% discount in the gift shop, and you got your name put next to the object for I think 2 years is our adoption phase. What we're going to do going forward is we're going to drop the printing and the posting out of certificates. So everything's going to be sent digitally, just because it's trying to save on materials. And frankly, none of us have got a good enough printer to print certificates that look worth sending out. But I don't know what you did, Hannah, with yours.
Very similar. I mean, we're going through redevelopment, so we haven't got the objects out on display at the moment. So we'll be treating our sort of our sponsors, our adopters slightly differently when we reopen. But again, it was that sort of pack of something which again physically they could pass on to their loved ones. So there was something to open, because we sort of noted that Christmas gifts seemed to be quite key, and actually that meant that we ramped up our campaign pre-Christmas on each of our successive years. But yeah, I think it's having something a little bit different to do. I think we had some badges as well that were created anyhow as part of our sort of other fundraising campaign, so we generally stick one of those in as well, and anything else we had to hand almost.
Are there any more questions from anyone else?
Yeah, hi there. It's about the same sort of topic of donor recognition. Have you got any tips and hints about easy ways to list your donors so they feel kind of loved? I've done a book in the past, so every year we'd get someone to handwrite in the names, and it was kind of stuck in a little case somewhere, and people could actually come and see it if they wanted to. I mean, you go to the kind of great big national museums, don't you, and the names of all the good and great are carved on the wall. But have you got what? Yep, that's the question really. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, well, we're doing a Clan Donald tree of sponsors once the redevelopment is finished. So you'll be able to, depending on the level of your donation, you'll either be a leaf sponsor or a branch sponsor chunk. The big funders like the NLHF are going to be in the root system. So yeah, I would say ideally have something on display. I mean, it can, maybe it's kind of poster material that you can write on or add to, or maybe it's a set display that then you can, for us it might be you can add on a leaf afterwards. So have a think about that. But I think definitely having it on display, and then I would say just take a photo of it and put it on your website and your social media, update it every now and then. I mean, you can list all the names on a page in your social media on your website, but that's not the most interesting. I think if a book's great, but if you can get a more visual thing and something that's again really relevant to your museum. For us, it's because it's our local clan. So actually, a lot of you will have a local clan or a local historical family or a story. Is there a local kind of legend that you can kind of display the tale? So like, for us, it might be like the legend of the Loch Ness Monster, and if you have different parts of the story, you could use that and put the sponsors on it. Just something really fun. And if you've got the space, that's the other thing. A lot of the time space is limited, but if you have some wall space, that's always the place I'd put it. And you could get them to, I think it's kind of connecting them to different parts. So if it is a story, is there different parts of the story that the different levels of donors or sponsors are going to be added to that kind of have hierarchy of a sense. I mean, you don't want to make it like, oh, you give more money, you're better, but have a, do have some sort of distinction for the different levels. That can be really good. That's what I'd recommend.
Another Highland example, sorry to hit people who are not in Scotland, but Glencoe Museum did a redisplay, God, a long time ago now, 3 years ago now, and we one of our star objects is a picture stone with a fish. So they had fish templates in metal, and they're on the wall in a kind of wavy pattern. So people who donated have a fish, and then when you walk into the atrium, the fish is the first thing you see. So again, it's something there. I think there's slightly bigger fish and slightly smaller fish, but yeah, something that you can see and add to as well, I think, because that way we had quite a few to begin with, but it's certainly been added to since we opened the new museum. So yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it as well.
Yeah, and you can look to nature in that way. Like, is there a local animal, a local flower, a local plant that's really, for some reason, your area is known for that type of flower? That's what you can use, and you can use the petals and the stem and all sorts. So tap into something nice and local, I think, for your design. And you know, it's worth maybe investing a bit of money and getting a designer to develop it for you so that it looks really good, but try and get it so it's a one-off purchase that you can then add to. But yeah, that's like, I like the fish. That's a great one.
So from a Rural Museums Network point of view, Rihanna, you've already said you would like to have these slides. I mean, is there anything else that we can be doing for you guys to make this easier, or to, you know, give you more advice or anything like that? I mean, just, you know, we have a website, so we can share, we'll be sharing these slides on our YouTube channel, and we could have a wee page on our website with some links and some advice. But I mean, what else can we be doing for you guys to help?
I was just going to say, we could probably put some stuff in as well, because we've had various things around the mill, and I mean, definitely around kind of the social media aspect. I was wondering about something on social media that where people actually put in their ideas. You know, the people can kind of ask questions and do stuff, so it's a bit more kind of discursive.
Like a kind of Facebook group, they can work quite well. There's a few, if you search like, you know, like I'm in loads of Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups for fundraising, but a kind of heritage specific one would be really good. UK Heritage Fundraisers or something like that.
Sounds like popping something out on the Jiskmail members group to sort of kick off discussions would be really, really good from a Royal Museums Network point of view. And we can obviously, yeah, then supplement any web content we can put up. So that'd be really good.